"You can't prove anything, old woman. You're just a jealous nobody." Those were the last words Veronica Hayes spoke to me, her voice dripping with the sort of disdain usually reserved for stray dogs. She said them over our delicate cucumber sandwiches at the country club, 2 days before she was supposed to marry my son. And she was right, of course. Legally, I had nothing. Yet, before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It warms this old heart to know where my words travel. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 75 years old, and I have spent the last half-century believing that grace and good manners were the sharpest weapons a woman could wield. That belief ended the day my son Julian screamed at me in front of 200 guests. "Go home, mother. This is her day, not yours. You're not wanted here." I was a widow, a retired history professor, and a woman who had poured every ounce of her life into her only child, Julian, my brilliant, gullible Julian. He had been so utterly consumed by Veronica's tailored beauty and practiced vulnerability that he couldn't see the predator beneath the silk veil. The wedding reception, a meticulously planned event that had cost me nearly a year of retirement savings, turned into a silent tableau. 200 faces staring at the woman being cast out by her own son. I didn't cry then. Tears would have been a weakness Veronica would have savored. I simply straightened the spine that had carried me through widowhood, picked up my small silver clutch, and walked out. But as my Buick rolled slowly away from the brightly lit ballroom and into the dark, cold Connecticut night, the gentle Eleanor Vance died. In her place sat a woman who understood that to save a lamb, you sometimes have to think like a wolf. The next morning, Julian called. His voice was thick, not with remorse, but with that peculiar blend of self-pity and entitlement that surfaces when a child needs a favor. "Mom," he began, the word tasting like ash in my ear. "Listen, I'm so sorry about yesterday. Veronica was under a lot of stress with the ceremony, and I just overreacted. You know how it is. Oh, I know exactly how it is, darling." "Of course, sweetheart," I replied, my voice as smooth as cream, not a single fracture of hurt showing. "These things happen. We'll talk when you're back." "Actually, that's why I called," he said, moving swiftly to the point. "Veronica thinks Italy is too much hassle right now, with the jet lag and all. We had a better idea. Could we borrow the keys to the Crestwood Chalet? We'd rather honeymoon up in the Adirondacks. It's quieter, the Crestwood Chalet. A sprawling lakefront home, not a mansion in the Hamptons, but a piece of priceless, irreplaceable history that Julian's late father, Arthur, had built with his own 2 hands. It was the only place I truly felt close to my husband. Julian knew that. Veronica certainly knew its estimated value, about $5 million and rising. The property Julian expected to inherit. The chalet, I mused, a false sweetness coating every syllable. What a beautiful choice. "Of course, darling. I'll have the keys ready for you this afternoon." Julian arrived with Veronica an hour later. She avoided my eyes, but I looked directly at her, letting her see the polite, blank mask I wore. She was wearing a new diamond pendant, a wedding gift no doubt, and one Julian would pay for, whether he knew it or not. "Thank you so much, Eleanor," she chirped, that practiced, syrupy gratitude. "This means the world to us. It's so rustic and private." "It is," I agreed, handing over the single heavy brass key. "But it's also very secure. I had a whole new system installed 6 months ago. Very sophisticated. Cameras in all the common areas, motion sensors, the works. Just remember the code." They drove off in Julian's new electric Range Rover, their laughter echoing briefly in my quiet driveway. I waited until the car was out of sight, then walked inside, not to weep, but to the small, unassuming home office where I kept my laptop. The security system wasn't just for burglars. It was a complete, remotely controlled smart home infrastructure, and yes, it included the ability to override the chalet's media server. I opened the control panel and started the upload. It was a very special video, a 20-minute highlight reel I had been saving for exactly the right moment, a nightmare they would never forget. My investigation had started 3 weeks before the wedding, with a phone call that vaporized every remaining shred of my trust. "Mrs. Vance, this is Officer Thompson with the Albany Police Department. We're following up on a case involving identity fraud and aggravated theft, and the name Veronica Hayes has appeared in connection with a previous alias. My blood turned to ice. I was addressing invitations then, my elegant fountain pen hovering over a perfectly scripted name. What sort of alias, officer? We believe the person you know as Veronica Hayes has previously operated under the name Laura Simmons. Ms. Simmons was involved in a series of highly structured financial crimes in the Southeast, targeting primarily older, wealthy men through various exclusive clubs and dating platforms. Laura Simmons. The name was new, but the pattern was agonizingly familiar. And what does this Laura Simmons have to do with my son? She left behind quite a paper trail, Mrs. Vance, before changing her identity legally 18 months ago. Coincidentally, right around the time she met Mr. Vance at the Yacht Club charity gala. Julian had told me Veronica changed her name to escape a controlling, obsessive ex. I had foolishly believed the tragic damsel in distress narrative. It turns out the only thing she was escaping was a federal indictment. Officer Thompson admitted they had nothing solid enough for an immediate arrest on the new identity, but he felt the family should be warned. Julian, predictably, was deaf to the warning. "You're grasping at straws, Mom," he'd said, his face closed off. "This is exactly what I warned you about. You're trying to sabotage my happiness." That was the moment I realized the police couldn't help. I needed someone who operated outside the bounds of evidence, someone who dealt in leverage and truth, not warrants. I hired Rosa Mendez, a retired investigator who specialized in matrimonial fraud and disappearances. Within a week, Rosa's findings were piled onto my antique mahogany coffee table, a horrifying mosaic of deceit. "Your future daughter-in-law is a virtuoso, Eleanor," Rosa had said, her voice dry. "Laura Simmons married twice before Julian. Both times short whirlwind romances with substantial settlements in her favor. She calls it divorce by design." Rosa pointed to a photograph. Veronica, looking younger, with fiery red hair, standing next to a 70-year-old gentleman in a tuxedo. "This is George Albright, a retired oil magnate in Texas. Married 18 months. Died of a heart attack 6 months after the divorce was finalized. The autopsy showed traces of specific beta blockers in his system, not enough to kill him outright, but certainly enough to put a strain on an already weak heart. His family pursued it, but nothing stuck." My hands had begun to tremble, gripping the edge of the table. "You're suggesting I'm suggesting the timing was convenient," Rosa finished for me. She walked away with $4 million from the divorce, plus a small inheritance from his life insurance. "No charges, Eleanor. Perfectly clean." Then there was the second file. Thomas Rourke, a tech investor from Silicon Valley. Same pattern. Meeting, marriage, divorce, and then a mysterious fall down the stairs in his home. "He broke his neck. 2 convenient deaths. 2 massive payouts," I whispered, feeling the acidic taste of bile rising in my throat. "And here's the hook," Rosa said, pulling out her laptop. I managed to retrieve a few files from an old, unsecured cloud account she used while she was Laura Simmons. She wasn't as digital savvy as she thought she was. The video that started playing was the final devastating piece of evidence. It showed Veronica, or Laura, 6 months prior, lounging in a luxury suite, not alone, and certainly not the victim she claimed to be. The audio was crystal clear. It wasn't just a physical betrayal. It was a conversation, a blueprint. She was detailing to her accomplice exactly how long it would take to liquidate Julian's stock portfolio, force the sale of the Crestwood Chalet, and disappear with the proceeds. She described Julian as a sad, lonely puppy whose daddy issues make him a walking ATM. "Can you give me a copy of this, Rosa?" "The whole thing, including the metadata and timestamps." Rosa nodded, a flicker of professional respect in her eyes. "What are you planning, Eleanor?" "This is a dangerous woman." I smiled, a cold, brittle gesture I hadn't realized I was capable of. "I'm going to save my son, even if he despises me for it." The days leading up to the wedding were torture. Julian was glowing with foolish happiness, while I held the knowledge of his impending doom like a lead weight. I tried one last time, 3 days before the event. "Julian, my darling, tell me, has Veronica ever been completely honest about her family? The aunt in the nursing home? It seems a bit vague." He had already built his wall. "Don't, Mom, don't go down this road again. She lost her parents young. She had a terrible upbringing. Why do you insist on tearing her down?" She loves me. She really loves me. And if I told you I had proof she was a different person entirely, proof that she was married twice before to men who met, unfortunate ends? His face hardened into a mask of wounded pride. I would say you need professional help, Mother. You're trying to destroy my life because you're lonely. You need to accept that I'm moving on. That judgment, the accusation of loneliness and pathetic desperation, hurt more than any malice Veronica could muster. He was so convinced I was the villain. I knew then that the only way for him to believe the truth was to see Veronica's mask shatter with his own eyes. Then came the lunch. Veronica called me, suggesting we meet, just the two of us, to clear the air. Over the delicate salads, she made her move. Eleanor, I hope you understand that as Julian's wife, I'll need to be his primary confidant, especially regarding financial matters. It wouldn't be appropriate for him to discuss our private business with anyone else, even family. The opening salvo to isolate him. I almost laughed at the predictability of the maneuver. I wouldn't expect him to share personal information, I said. Wonderful, because I'd hate for there to be any confusion about boundaries. Julian needs to feel completely honest with me. She was already planning to secure the lockbox and drain the accounts. Veronica, I asked, leaning forward, lowering my voice conspiratorially. Do you love my son? Her smile was flawless. Of course I love him. What a strange question. Because loving someone means wanting what is best for them, I continued softly. And I wonder if you've ever loved anyone that way? George Albright, Thomas Rourke. You always leave them with such generous severance packages. The effect was instantaneous and thrilling. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and sickly. Her flawless composure cracked. I don't know what you're talking about, she hissed. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know Laura Simmons. Or the specific kind of beta blocker George Albright was taking. She stood up, knocking her chair over. This lunch is over. Sit down, Laura, I commanded, and the use of her real name, delivered with my history professor's gravitas, forced her back into her seat. Her hands were shaking. Here is what's going to happen, I said, calm and deliberate. You are going to marry Julian because stopping you now would hurt him more than going through with it. But I want you to know that I know exactly what you are. And the very second you move against my son, the instant his financial security is threatened, I will destroy you. You can't prove anything, she repeated. But the conviction was gone, can't I? I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot from the video Rosa had recovered. Not the whole conversation, just a close-up of her face, laughing cruelly, with the timestamp and file name clearly visible. Her denial was frantic. I deleted everything. That's impossible. Technology's amazing, isn't it? I smiled, putting the phone away. Delete doesn't always mean gone forever. Now I want you to be a good wife to my son. And if you don't, you'll find out what happens when you underestimate a mother. She fled the restaurant without another word. I stayed, finished my salad, and waited for the inevitable counterattack. The honeymoon was supposed to last 10 days. They were back after 48 hours. They arrived at my house mid-morning on a Tuesday. Veronica's mascara was streaked down her cheeks, and Julian looked as if he had aged a decade overnight. Hello, darlings, I said, opening the door with my warmest, most maternal smile. You're back early. How was the Crestwood Chalet? You know damn well how it was, Mom, Julian snapped, brushing past me. Veronica stood frozen in the foyer, her eyes full of raw hatred. I'm afraid I don't understand, I replied, a picture of innocent confusion. Did the trout not bite? Was the lake cold? The video, Mother. The video that somehow got uploaded to every single television in the house. The moment we turned on the master bedroom screen, it started playing. And it played on every screen downstairs, too. I gasped dramatically. Oh my goodness, a virus? How utterly dreadful. You know I can barely operate the microwave, let alone a complicated media system. Cut the act, Julian barked. You did this. It was her. Veronica finally cried out, pointing a shaky finger at me. She threatened me at lunch. She knows things about my past, things that aren't true, and she's trying to ruin our life. What things? Julian asked, looking wildly between us. This was the moment I had planned for. Veronica, darling, I said gently, if you have something to tell Julian about your past, Now would be an excellent time. They're lies. All lies, she insisted. She hired a private investigator to fabricate documents, fake videos. What documents? What videos? I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder Rosa had compiled. I handed it to Julian. Inside were copies of marriage certificates, divorce decrees, the police reports regarding Thomas Rourke's investigation, and the newspaper clippings detailing George Albright's autopsy results. Julian's hands trembled as he read, his color draining away. Sophia, what is this? Why does this say your name is Laura Simmons? Why are there 2 other marriage certificates? What is this about Thomas Rourke falling downstairs? I can explain, she wailed. It's not what it looks like. I was going to tell you after we were married. I was scared you wouldn't understand. Understand what? Julian's voice was the coldest I had ever heard it. That you've been married twice before? That 2 men died after divorcing you? That your real name is a lie? I sat down and watched the destruction. It was agonizing, but necessary. The name change was because of an abusive ex-husband. Veronica repeated the tired script. And those men, they weren't good people. They felt guilty about how they treated me, and they forced the money on me. And then they both just happened to die in accidents, Julian finished for her. He looked at me, a desperate question in his eyes. Mom, where did you get this? I explained Officer Thompson's initial call, the fraud case and the pattern of her preying on older, financially secure men. But I met her at the gala, Julian said slowly. Actually, according to Rosa's report, I corrected gently. She joined that specific yacht club 3 days before the gala, right after researching your family's estate and trust details. Julian sank onto the chaise lounge, a broken man. You researched my family. I love you, Julian. I love the security, the status, the future we could have had, she burst out. Everything else was the past. I changed for you. Did you? Julian looked at the folder. According to this report, you told Thomas Rourke the exact same thing, that you'd never felt love like this before. And your past didn't matter because you were different with him. His face was pale, but he was putting the pieces together now. His intelligence, dormant under her spell, was reasserting itself. I just watched a video, he said, standing up, his voice dangerously low. A video of you detailing exactly how you would sell off the Crestwood chalet and liquidate my father's portfolio. You called me a walking ATM. How exactly is that supposed to look good? The crying stopped. The mask was entirely gone. When she finally looked at him, the woman I saw was pure, cold calculation. You want the truth? She spat, her voice metallic. Fine. Yes, I researched you. Yes, I lied about my past. But so what? You got exactly what you wanted. A beautiful young wife to show off at the country club. Someone to make your mother jealous and prove you're not dependent on her. We used each other, Julian. The only difference is I'm honest about it. Did you ever love me? She stared him down. I love the life you could give me. But love you, Julian? I don't think I'm capable of loving anyone the way you mean. That was the final blow. The moment Julian's heart truly shattered was not when he learned she was a criminal, but when she confirmed she saw him only as a transaction. Get out of my house, he whispered. It's not your house yet, she sneered. Technically, it's still your mother's, and given what I know about the prenup you didn't make me sign, I'm entitled to a significant portion of your assets in the divorce. Julian looked at me, lost. Mom, what do I do? First, I said, taking his hand, you call your lawyer. Then you call the bank and freeze any joint accounts. Then you sit down and let me handle the rest. The divorce proceedings began exactly as Veronica had promised. She hired a shark of an attorney, Mr. Sterling, and immediately filed for half of everything, plus a generous alimony and damages for emotional distress. Mr. Sterling called me personally, threatening a lawsuit for illegal investigation and invasion of privacy. Mr. Sterling, I said, enjoying the sound of his arrogance, before you threaten a 75-year-old widow, I suggest you ask your client about the nature of Julian's inheritance. Has she informed you about the trust my husband established when Julian was 16? What trust? The one that specifically protects all family assets, including the Crestwood chalet, from being claimed by any spouse married for less than 2 years. I'm surprised Laura Simmons didn't research that when she was researching everything else. The phone line went silent. Sterling hung up shortly after. 2 days later, Veronica was back at my door. She was alone and desperate. "You've won, Eleanor," she admitted, standing in my living room, her eyes darting around. "You've successfully destroyed my marriage and my life. Congratulations. Now what do you want?" "I want you to sign a severance payment," she continued quickly before I could answer. $2 million. I'll disappear. No messy, drawn-out divorce. No publicity that connects Julian's name to the Black Widow wives headlines the media will create. She was right. A trial would destroy Julian's reputation. $2 million is a staggering sum for a 2-day marriage, Laura, I said, using her name deliberately. I have a counterproposal. You get nothing. You sign the divorce papers accepting full responsibility for the breakdown of the marriage. You waive all claims to assets or alimony, and you disappear anyway. Why would I agree to that? I walked to my desk and pulled out my final, most potent piece of leverage. Rosa had been busy. Because Rosa's investigation turned up something very interesting about Thomas Rourke's death. His family hired their own investigator, and that investigator had security camera footage from a neighbor's house. Footage that clearly shows you leaving his home at 11:47 p.m. the night he died, and then returning at 1:23 a.m. for exactly 4 minutes, right within the coroner's estimated time of death. Veronica collapsed into the nearest chair. "That's impossible! I deleted everything. I just went back for my purse. And you didn't think to mention this to the police at the time? The security footage, Laura, wouldn't be enough to convict you of murder, but it would be enough to reopen the investigation. And if Thomas Rourke's case is reopened, the DA will certainly take another look at George Albright's death, too." She was trapped. She knew the fraud conviction she was facing was minor compared to the possibility of a homicide investigation. "What do you want me to do?" She whispered. "I want you to sign a confession. A confession to fraud, to knowingly entering into marriage under false pretenses with the intent to defraud my son of his assets. Nothing about the deaths, just a simple admission of your identity and your motives. If you sign, I hold this footage. If you don't, I give the footage and all of Rosa's documentation to Officer Thompson tomorrow morning." The silence in the room was crushing. Finally, she looked up, and I saw a flash of something that might have been pure, grudging respect. "You really are a scary old woman." "I'm a mother protecting her child," I stated simply. "That makes me the most dangerous thing in the world." She signed the confession that afternoon. Within a week, she had filed for divorce on no-fault grounds, waiving all claims to Julian's assets. Within a month, she was gone from Connecticut entirely. Julian never knew about the security footage or the confession. As far as he knew, Veronica had simply chosen to leave quietly rather than fight a losing battle. The drinking stopped. The heartbroken late-night calls ended when Veronica's number was disconnected. Slowly, achingly, my son began to heal. "Mom," he said 2 months after she'd vanished, "I owe you an apology. A big one. You saved my life. I accused you of being jealous when you were only trying to protect me. I threw you out of my own wedding." "You were in love, darling," I said, smoothing his hair back from his forehead. "People do stupid, reckless things when they are in love. You were hurt and you turned on the person who loved you most. That's a classic defense mechanism. But you're safe now." I hadn't told him the full extent of my ruthlessness, the blackmail, the leveraged confession, because he needed to believe that justice was served cleanly, not through my dark machinations. "How did you know she was lying about everything?" he asked. "Instinct mostly," I lied, smiling gently. "Something about her felt wrong. She was too interested in the wrong things. She asked about your father's investment portfolio before she asked about your favorite book. When someone loves you, they want to know who you are. When someone's using you, they want to know what you're worth." 6 months later, Julian started dating Charlotte. She was a pediatric oncology nurse, kind and sturdy, with genuine laughter lines around her eyes. The first thing she did when she met me was show me pictures of her family, real people with real lives that could be verified. "This is my mom and dad at their 25th anniversary," she said, scrolling through her phone. "And this is my brother, who's an absolute menace." She brought me an apple and pear crumble, confessing she was nervous about cooking for a former professor, but it was absolutely delicious. After dinner, while Julian was out, Charlotte helped me stack the plates. "Mrs. Vance, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, dear." Julian told me about his first marriage. Not all the details, but enough. I just want you to know that I understand why you might be protective. I don't expect you to trust me right away. I know I have to earn that, but I hope eventually you'll see that I truly do love your son." I looked at her face, searching for the calculation I was so conditioned to find. I found only sincere, open concern. "What makes you love him?" I asked. She smiled, and the smile transformed her whole face. "He's kind without being weak. He treats the cleaning staff and the CEOs with the same respect. And when he talks about you, his whole face lights up. Any man who loves his mother that much is someone I want to know better." I called Rosa the next morning. "Charlotte Thompson," I said. "Run a full background check." "Deep dive?" Rosa laughed. "Eleanor, I've already done it. She's exactly what she appears to be. A nice woman from a nice family who just happens to adore your son. Her biggest scandal is a library fine she forgot to pay." A year later, Julian proposed to Charlotte in my backyard garden next to the ancient oak tree Arthur and I had planted when Julian was born. She said yes, and the first thing she did was turn and hug me. "I hope this means I get to call you Mom," she whispered. "I'd be honored, sweetheart," I whispered back. The wedding was small and quiet, held in the same garden. Julian's toast brought tears to my eyes. "Mom, you saved my life," he said, holding Charlotte's hand. "You did what was necessary, even when I was too stupid to listen. And I love you more than I can ever express." As I watched them dance, I thought about Veronica. Wherever she was, I hoped she hadn't found anyone else to victimize. I had always considered myself a gentle person, a woman who sought quiet resolution. But when my son's happiness was threatened, I discovered I was capable of being cunning, ruthless, and absolutely unforgiving. I had hired investigators, manipulated security systems, and forced a confession through calculated leverage. A year ago, I would have been horrified by those actions. Now, watching Julian and Charlotte laugh, I felt nothing but profound satisfaction. I'd done what was necessary to protect my child. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's simply ensuring that good people get the happy endings they deserve. And sometimes, being a good mother means being willing to become the villain in someone else's story. I am finally at peace with both the woman I used to be and the woman I had to become. Never underestimate a mother protecting her child. We're capable of anything when the people we love are threatened. And to any predators out there thinking you can target someone's family, think again. Because somewhere out there is a mother like me, and we are always watching. Thank you for listening.